I want to get into how it is that a priest who was criminally convicted, spent time in prison for abusing, is now a chancellor in France. I want to ask Father Charles Murr, how does that happen exactly? Hold on, Joe. This guy has not done anything wrong in 30 years. He's repentant.
It almost seems that no one is really in charge. And when you've given all of the authority to all of these bishops to decide what each one is going to do on his own, this is what happens. One thing is to forgive the sin. Another thing is to be prudent and to be just. You owe prudence and justice to the young people in your diocese. You owe that to them.
He's criminally convicted, went to prison for the crime, and he's still a priest? How did he not get laicized? How does he? It seems so unjust to me, Father Charles.
By the way, my name is Joe McLean. I host a radio program called A Catholic Take, where we look at the world through a Catholic lens. I'd love for you to hang out with us. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and let us know what you think in the comments below.
I want to jump into this story while we wait for Father Murr to connect from the pillar. I'll link to it in the show notes today. I shared this story yesterday as like a news segment, but this is really mind-boggling to me. Will Leo weigh in on France's criminal chancellor? So here's the deal. A French archbishop is standing by his decision to appoint as chancellor a priest who was convicted of raping a 16-year-old boy and who spent 4 years in prison for the offense. I want you to just ruminate on that. Take that in for a moment. In France, an archbishop has appointed chancellor. That's the guy basically running the administration side of his diocese. A priest who was criminally convicted is now running that diocese. And this happened like back in the 90s. When he was criminally convicted. How is he still a priest? That's the number one question on my mind. Anyway, the article goes on. While Archbishop of Toulouse argues that appointing the priest to a prominent archdiocesan position is an act of mercy, Catholics in France and the United States seem skeptical, with some asking why Father Dominic Spina is eligible for any diocesan assignment at all. It's an act of mercy. Okay, it goes on. And as the Archbishop doubles down in the face of criticism, the case seems almost certain to find itself on the desk of Pope Leo XIV, whose judgment on the case would speak volumes about what the Church can expect of the pontiff's approach to safeguarding. That's the key there, safeguarding. The Archdiocese of Toulouse broke into the headlines Monday when the early June appointment of Father Dominic Spina as Archdiocesan Chancellor caught the attention of French journalists. Little surprise, given that in 2005, Spina was sentenced to prison for raping a 16 and 17-year-old boy in the early 1990s, when Spina was a high school chaplain. According to French media, the priest's victim was a high school student from an abusive home who wanted to become a priest and who relied on Spina as a spiritual guide. In the early 2000s, the priest was accused of having, I won't tell you what it is, but inappropriate relations, among other acts of coercion. Spina initially confessed and subsequently retracted his confession before a judge, saying he had misunderstood the allegations against him. But while some charges were reportedly restricted by the state statute of limitations, the priest was sentenced to 5 years incarceration, with 1 year of the prison term suspended. Spina was not laicized. Let that sink in for a second. How is that exactly? How was that? How did that happen? The guy was criminally convicted and found guilty and went to prison. Still a priest? Today, all these years later, but Joe, the Archbishop, is being merciful. This guy is repented. This guy has seen the error of his ways. He's not done anything wrong ever since he has repented. Okay. Kind of reminds me, just a wee bit anyway, of the Summer of Shame and Cardinal McCarrick when Bishop Joseph Strickland stood up on the floor of the USCCB and says, we must have a third-party independent investigation into how this guy rose to power, how he got suppressed and how he got brought back out to be put back to use. Remember all that? Remember back in 2004 when Theodore McCarrick and Archbishop Gregory got together in 2004 and gave us the Dallas Accord? Remember that? How does that scenario happen? Might it be, just wondering out loud here, might it be that it's because when men are convicted or found guilty of crimes, we don't laicize them? We don't, listen, you should repent. You should ask forgiveness. You should lead a good and holy, virtuous life for the rest of your days. You should do acts of reparation. Does that mean you should be in charge of a diocese? I don't think so, at least not in my humble opinion. But the article goes on. The fact has caused confusion for some Catholics. You think? Caused some confusion? I think. Anyway, it goes on. Because the church's canon law provides for the laicization of a cleric who commits an offense against the sixth commandment involving a minor. But in the years Spina committed these crimes against the student, canon law defined a minor for the purposes of the statutes regarding sexual crimes as a person under 16 years of age. This also reminds me of that same time period when Cardinal Supich stood up during the debate and said, hold on, guys, we can't talk about, adults and consensual activities. Remember that? So we can ignore all of the abuse of seminarians. Let's just focus on the kids. No, it's both and. It ain't either or. But I see Father Charles Murr just jumped on with us from sunny Spain. Praise be to God. Good morning to you, Father Charles Murr. How are you?
And a hearty good morning to you, Joe.
Praise be to God. Hey, did you see the story, what's going on in your neighboring country over there, France, with this, the Archbishop in Toulouse appointing this man who was criminally convicted as chancellor of his diocese?
No, yeah. I didn't see that.
Now, you are like the whisperer of all things understanding what the hierarchy does and doesn't do. Help me understand how this is a thing.
Am I?
You are, sir. You are.
Yeah, you hope so. Look, we have long been without any direction in the church. I would say about almost 60 years now. There's no. It almost seems that no one is really in charge. And when you've given all of the authority to all of these bishops to decide what each one is going to do on his own, this is what happens. There is no real organization. It's sad. It's sad. And the only time that people in Rome get wind of something is after it's happened.
Right. And after the controversy and after the scandal.
Mother Pasqualina told me this, right? And I said, she said that Pius XII had set up for 3 to 5 years, prepared the Second Vatican Council. Pius XII. And I said, well, Why didn't he call it? Why didn't he call the council? She said, because he found the bishops of the world not sufficiently mature.
Oof.
Right? Well, this is where we are. This is 60 years later, and we're still not sufficiently mature. But what they've done with collegiality is they've given to all of the bishops the authority to run their own show. Well, that's fine if they know what they're doing. But apparently this man in Toulouse does not. And quite a number of others do not. And there's no one in central authority. There's very little going on.
Well, then how does this guy get to keep ministry? He's criminally convicted, went to prison for the crime. And he's still a priest? How did he not get laicized? How does he, it seems so unjust to me, Father Charles. It seems so unjust. This guy gets to keep a job. He gets to active ministry. And Father Clay Hunt sits on his parents' ranch out in West Texas because he spoke the truth boldly with courage and was told to shut up and sit down.
I agree. Look, we're lacking a real code of canon law. A code of canon law with some teeth, we don't have. We haven't had it for years. We're lacking central authority. When was the last time you heard that somebody was excommunicated? We don't like to use that word. That's judging people. We don't judge people. Well, excuse me. We need somebody to start judging somebody. Things pretty soon. Things are out of order. They're just out of order, and no one seems to be in charge.
Yeah, there's a
Try to
lack of
find the one
discipline.
who's in charge of that. The bishop will send you to a committee, and the committee will send you to this, and then they'll go to Rome, and nobody will know what's. It's just nobody's in charge. It's sad. It's sad.
So at some point, I mean, this Pillar article that I was reading right before you jumped on about this issue in France, it speculates that Pope Leo will probably have to weigh in on this, given how it's starting to ruffle a lot of feathers here. And just this, again, it seems so bizarre to so many people that this guy could keep any ministry whatsoever. But let me ask you about this. Let's talk about this aspect of mercy. The bishop in Toulouse says, hold on, Joe. This guy has not done anything wrong in 30 years. He has shown to us that he can, he's repentant, he's sorry, he's pursuing virtue. So there's an act of mercy here. That's the argument from the Archbishop in Toulouse. Does he have an argument here? Should I be not concerned because the priest has demonstrated over the past 30 years that he's no longer going to be doing bad things to minors?
That's a very good question. I would say that for the rest of his life, the bishop should be on guard for any occasion of putting this man in the near proximity of minors. Yes. I think that's a safeguard that the laity are deserve. Probably this will go to Rome, but there's no need for it to go to Rome. A bishop is supposed to be able to handle these things with prudence. That's why he was made a bishop. If not, there's a metropolitan in charge over him who should call his attention to it. If not, there's a papal nuncio who should call his attention to it. If not, there's the Pope in Rome. But it's like I don't understand. I don't understand this confusion. They should act quickly, and they should act correctly. Boom.
Yeah. What happens if they don't? And I think that's kind of been the norm under the Francis pontificate. In fact,
well, yeah, it's been the norm for half a century, Joe. They don't act. They don't act. That's why we're in the mess we're in.
The Archbishop in Toulouse actually is quoting Pope Francis here in his response.
There you go.
The criticisms. He says, Pope Francis said that God is mercy. That's his name. And we Christians are witnesses to God's mercy. On one hand, I'm like, you know what? We should be able to forgive the most ardent of sinners. I've often said, because there's this rumor that there was this mystical vision of what's his name, the fascist dictator in Italy. He's in purgatory, and I said, you know what? It would be great. Yeah, but Mussolini. It would be. I want to live in a world in which Mussolini asks for forgiveness and receives it, and praise be, because that means there's a chance for me, right? There's hope for me if God can forgive a guy like Mussolini. If he can forgive a guy like this priest, then he can forgive me too. Praise be to God for it. But again, it seems tone deaf to keep a guy like this in active ministry. We can forgive him, but we don't have to hang out with him, do we? Is that what mercy means? Forgive means you have to hang out.
Let's take another example. Let's take a simple example. Joe stole $5 from me. Joe comes and says, Father, I'm sorry I stole $5. It's bothering my conscience. Will you forgive me? My mercy, I am all merciful.
You are.
My mercy would say, yes, Joe, I forgive you. And my my immediate follow-up would be, and my $5? Why? Because one is a question of mercy, one is a question of justice. They are not independent. They're not independent. They go hand in hand. I'll forgive the act, yes, but injustice you still owe. Now, you can forgive the action, you can forgive the sin of any sinner. Actually, the unforgivable sin of which Scripture speaks is to think that there is a sin that's too big to be forgiven, that your sin is too big to be forgiven, whatever it may be. However, one thing is to forgive the sin. Another thing is to be prudent and to be just. You owe prudence and justice to the young people in your diocese. You owe that to them. So you're not going to put this man back in ministry, if you will, with young people, with minors. You don't do that. It's simply prudent.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is a wonderful thing, and it's all powerful, and it can change lives, and it does. However, there's a question of justice that's always there. If to quote Francis on this is actually semi-disastrous, because you've got the same man saying, Francis said in the confessional, he told all of us priests, if you can imagine this, the man shocked me every other day with something, and I couldn't believe it was coming out of his mouth. He said every priest in the confessional must forgive sins, even when the penitent is not repentant.
Wow.
Well, that's what he said. Of course, we pay no heed to that because it doesn't make sense and it's wrong. But these were the instructions he's giving. So to quote him on mercy would, oh my goodness, wow, no, you don't do that. Look to Aquinas, to quote, not Bergoglio.
All mercy and no justice. Those that would want all mercy and no justice. What's behind that? Is there a sense of guilt? Is there, what motivates that thinking? All mercy and no justice.
Well, I would say either a sense of guilt or people who are so naive they've never sinned.
Yeah, who's
people
that?
who don't understand the consequences of sin. There are people like that. There are people I've met them. They're very few and far between, but there are some people who are very naive, and they think that the world is just a wonderful, good place. Well, it's kind of not, and you've got to be careful.
Right. It's kind of
for goodness sake, you won't. Well, it is kind of not. You're not going to make it very far.
The gospel today from the Novus Ordo clearly states the world will hate you and want to kill you,
yes,
and you are to persevere until the end. And yet, no matter what Jesus says to us directly, we just think, well, we need to be friends with the world, Father. We just need to be good friends with the world. The world needs to understand us better. We need to be more open.
Be as gentle as doves, and wise and cunning like the very serpent.
Did you like that video? It's okay. You can admit it. It's perfectly fine. Hey, we cover the big stories of our day, from inside the church to outside the church to all points in between, and we do it from a Catholic perspective. It's called A Catholic Take. It's a radio program Monday through Friday. We live stream it right here on this channel, by the way, so make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We would be very grateful to you. And don't forget, you're going to want to watch this video right here because you don't want to miss anything.